humans discover a planet inhabited by an advanced superintelligent civilization. On the abandoned planet Sirius 6b, an endless war rages on. Private Leon loses a handful of cigarettes to his buddy in a bet when he suddenly spots someone approaching the bunker. It's a terrified soldier from the Neb, surprising, since their forces haven't been seen in over 6 months. Lieutenant Londowska is stunned. How did he make it past all their automated defense systems? She raises her weapon, ready to shoot, but hesitates. Something feels off, he's completely alone. The Neb soldier glances around in panic, trying to signal something. Suddenly, screamers burst from underground. The man opens fire, but it's too late. One of the machines severs his arm, then tears him to pieces. Leon gags at the sight, while Londowska starts to question whether such brutality toward the enemy is truly justified. 5 years earlier, Alliance scientists had developed self-replicating machines to combat the new economic bloc. These autonomous robots were nicknamed Screamers because of the deafening noise they emit during attacks. Just then, Lieutenant Commander Chuck enters and reminds them that without the Screamers, they would have lost the war long ago. Curious about what the Neb soldier was trying to show them, he heads outside to investigate. Leon tries to stop him, warning it might be a bomb, but Chuck goes anyway. Screamers are programmed to target anything with a heartbeat. That's why Alliance soldiers wear special bracelets that emit a frequency making them invisible to the machines. Chuck activates his bracelet and approaches the remains of the soldier. He's surprised to see the Screamers dragging body parts underground, something they've never done before. He manages to shoot one of the machines and retrieves a metal cylinder clutched in the dead soldier's hand. Inside is a message for Alliance Command. Chuck brings it to Commander Joe Hendrickson, who is listening to Mozart and admiring an ancient coin. The message turns out to be a high-level peace proposal from Marshal Richard Cooper of the Neb's 5th Army. He invites 2 Alliance officers for negotiations and guarantees their safety. Chuck is thrilled by the offer, finally hoping for peace. But Joe is skeptical. It could easily be another Neb trap. He instructs his aide, MacDonald, to send the telegram to San Francisco for approval before making any moves. Suddenly, MacDonald reports an incoming distress signal from a merchant ship requesting permission to land. Joe orders a full scan before allowing anything through. Chuck then discovers that the Neb's command ship is stationed near their planet, but its transmitters have been silent for 2 weeks. Later that day, Joe holds a meeting with Secretary Green, who appears via glitching hologram due to Sirius 6b's radiation. Despite the interference, Green manages to deliver critical news. The Neb has discovered another resource-rich planet, one without radiation. They want peace, to jointly mine the new world's resources, and he urges the Alliance not to take any actions that could jeopardize the negotiations. As they reflect on the hopeful news, Chuck says he's glad the war never reached Earth. But Joe isn't so sure. Maybe if it had, the generals would have called for a ceasefire years ago. The two head to the bar, imagining what they'll do once they're back on Earth. But their conversation is cut short by an emergency alarm. A massive shockwave rocks the building. Alliance troops rush outside and find a huge Alliance aircraft wrecked nearby. Inside, they discover a nuclear reactor and a single survivor from a 38-person crew. The man isn't wearing a bracelet, and within moments, the Screamers rise from underground. At first, the robots focus on removing all the bodies. Then they attempt to attack the survivor, but the Alliance soldiers manage to fight off the Screamers and bring the man back to the bunker. The survivor turns out to be Private Ace Jefferson, a firearms specialist. As he introduces himself to the commander, the latter closely examines one of the upgraded Screamers. Even though it had been shot and nearly dismantled, the Screamer still shows mechanical reflexes, something that baffles both Joe and Ace. Suddenly, they're interrupted by Chuck. After inspecting the ship, the team discovers that its nuclear reactor was programmed to manufacture weapons, even though the shuttle was marked as civilian transport. Ace insists he had no knowledge of this. According to him, their unit was headed to Triton 4, the very planet where Alliance and Neb leadership supposedly planned to begin mining operations. However, Ace reveals that the Alliance secretly sent a 4,000-strong army to Triton 4 to launch a full-scale assault on Neb forces. Chuck and Joe are stunned, especially since Secretary Green had been insisting on a ceasefire. But then Ace drops a bombshell. The real Secretary Green was eliminated by the Alliance command 2 years ago. It becomes clear that there was never any peace deal, just a new war, on a new planet. Chuck still believes in the holographic messages from Green, but Joe suspects it was all a trick by their generals. The Alliance is starting a new war over resources, while the soldiers stranded on Sirius 6b have simply been abandoned. The command can't allow them to return to Earth. If the truth about the Alliance's real motives came out, no one would fight for them. Realizing they've been left behind, Joe decides to go to Neb headquarters himself to negotiate a real ceasefire. Chuck wants to go with him, but Joe chooses to take Ace instead. He doesn't want to risk the lives of his own people. The friends say goodbye. Chuck stays behind to lead the base, while Joe and Ace set out across the snow-covered planet. They stop near an old oil refinery, where Joe gives Ace a red cigarette, something that helps neutralize the effects of radiation. Along the way, Joe shares a bit of history. Everyone used to work for the Neb, mining beryllium, a rare mineral so powerful that a single spoonful could power a trip from Earth to Saturn in a day. But after a while, the workers discovered that mining beryllium released dangerous levels of radiation. They refused to continue and seal the mines. In response, Neb leadership decided to resume extraction by force. That's when the alliance was formed, to support the miners in their rebellion on Sirius. But now, there's no one left to count on. They're on their own. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a screamer. It ambushes a rat and drags the body underground. Startled, Ace asks if these things can even still be called robots. Joe explains that the original screamers were created by Alliance scientists, but now, no one knows how many are out there. They were designed to self-replicate endlessly. Moments later, Joe and Ace spot movement nearby. They take cover, ready to engage, but it turns out to be just a little boy holding a teddy bear. The orphan, David, says he lives alone in the ruins and begs to come with them. Joe's puzzled. How has this kid survived without being caught by the screamers? But the boy can't give a straight answer to any question. Joe gives him a food ration and tells him they'll pick him up on the way back. But Ace manages to convince Joe to let the kid come along. That night, they take shelter in the ruins. Ace shares his perfect rat cooking technique, while Joe jumps in fright at a creepy stone beetle coming to life, much to David's amusement. Later, Joe radios the bunker. The signal cuts in and out, but Chuck manages to say that a new recruit arrived today. He seems a little odd, but everything should be fine. A few minutes later, Joe plays with David's teddy bear, unaware that Ace has taken off his radiation bracelet to relax. That's when a screamer attacks, but Joe reacts in time, saving Ace and destroying the merciless machine. Inspecting the wreckage, Joe notices the upgraded screamer looks more like an animal. It has an enhanced chip marked with strange symbols. The next morning, the group crosses a frozen lake. From a vent shaft in the refinery, a Neb soldier spots them. He scans the three figures, and suddenly opens fire on David. Joe and Ace rush to help, only to discover, to their horror, that the boy is actually a disguised screamer. It lets out a bone-chilling scream, just like the others, and bends Ace's gun barrel in half. But somehow, Ace manages to pull the trigger and blow it apart. At the same time, Neb sniper Becker approaches them. He warns that the Screechers have gotten smarter. Recently, a robot disguised as a child infiltrated their bunker and wiped out the entire team. Joe and Ace hand over a fake telegram about peace talks, and Becker decides to let them into the shelter. They follow the soldiers, though Joe admits to Ace that he doesn't trust them. Once inside, Joe calls Chuck to warn him about the new type of Screechers that look like humans, but the radiation interrupts the signal, and Chuck can't hear him. During the conversation, it comes out that Privates Becker and Ross are the only survivors of the Screecher attack. This sets Ace on edge, and tensions flare between the soldiers. Neb accuses the Alliance of creating the Screechers, which are now killing indiscriminately, but Ace argues they only did it out of necessity after Neb started bombing them. The situation is on the brink of turning deadly when another survivor, Jessica, suddenly joins them. She gives the guys a bottle of scotch to calm everyone down. Jessica is a black market trader who sheltered the soldiers after the attack. She agrees to show Joe a secret underground route to the Neb headquarters, but only if he promises to get her back to Earth. She's been preparing to leave for a long time, but Joe delivers the bad news. No one is going back to Earth, as the factions are continuing their war on a completely new planet. He suggests she settle in the Alliance bunker instead. Then Ace shows the commander that Jessica's arsenal includes Alliance weapons and a plutonium missile they could use, but Joe refuses, not wanting to make the place any more radioactive. Equipped, they descend deeper underground via elevator and cautiously make their way toward the Neb headquarters, unsure of what they'll find. Rats scurry through the tunnels, and Ross starts to panic. Becker teases him, but Ross just repeats for him to back off. Soon, they reach the lower level of the command center and find the entire food court covered in a red mess. Ross freaks out, so Joe fires a warning shot to get him under control. He orders Ace to shoot Ross if he doesn't calm down. The commander tries to send a message back to base, but they have to hide when a small reptilian Screecher with a saw for a face enters the room. It's only there to download data from the computer before leaving, but an anxious Ross shows up too soon. Ace has to save him using his bracelet to hide his heartbeat. It works until Ace makes a noise. The Screecher jumps on him, and Ross steps in to save his comrade, shooting the robot. The commotion attracts more machines, so the commander orders Ace to take everyone back to Jessica. Meanwhile, he uses the computer to study the Screecher processors. The screen shows the designs of self-modifying robots, Type 1, Reptilian, Type 3, cyborgs like David. When Joe tries to get information on the second type, a Type 3 approaches him and demands he come along. It then tries to kill the commander, but he fights back. Then dozens of other David-type bots emerge from the shadows as Joe runs back to Ace. They take the elevator back up to the factory, where the rest are waiting. The commander wants to know what a Type 2 screamer looks like. Jessica explains that it was a lure, shaped like a wounded soldier crying for help. The Alliance has never encountered anything like this, but Becker says they all do the same thing. Help me, or sometimes, leave me alone, suggesting that Ross could be a Type 2 screamer. Becker throws a knife into Ross's chest, but Joe pulls a red blade out of him, proving he's human. That's when Joe and Jessica start to suspect Becker, seeing his action as inhumane. But no one can be sure that anyone else isn't a screamer, so tension stays high. The group decides to head back to the Alliance bunker. Jessica asks if they'd be let in without Joe, but he says that if Chuck is smart, he wouldn't let them in anyway. Becker shows no remorse for the killing but calls it a mistake. Joe responds that he'd finish him off before letting him make another one. The four retrace the same path Joe and Ace came, passing the destroyed David and listening to Becker rant about how insignificant and powerless they all are against the influence of massive corporations. When they reach the bunker, Chuck tells Joe to go down while he refuses to come out. The commander senses something off in his friend, who keeps repeating the same words, so the group pulls back. Then the bunker gates swing open, and a Type 3 army comes out. They move slowly, and the group simply settles on a dune and starts picking them off. The robots ignite easily, but suddenly they start transforming into cutters. Ace charges the mini nuclear bomb he took from Jessica, and Joe hurls it at the base. The Alliance facility explodes, wiping out all the Type 3 screamers and sending a shockwave that knocks the four survivors off their feet. By the time they regain their senses, the sun is already up. Ace hears Becker, wounded and screaming, help me, and rushes to save him, but walks straight into a trap set by a Type 2 screamer. The screamer crushes Ace with its hands, then flings his body aside. It also shoves the commander away when he charges at it. Joe fires at Becker's face, but it only damages the flesh suit. Becker starts speaking in a robotic voice, claiming he's not a Type 2 screamer but something entirely different. Unlike the robots controlled by a collective mind, he can think independently, but he talks so much that Joe uses the time to load a grenade into his pistol and fires, splitting Becker's body in half. Inside is a triangular processor, unlike the round ones in the original Alliance robots or the square ones in the self-modified screamers. Jessica asks to see the chip, but first Joe wounds her hand to confirm she's human. He's about to do the same to himself, but she stops him, trusting him. They quickly share a kiss before heading toward a place called Alamogordo, where miners first discovered the planet's valuable resource and where scientists built nuclear bombs. That's also where an emergency shuttle for high-ranking officers should be waiting, away back to Earth. On the way, a tired Jessica admits she sees no reason to return to Earth. The commander confesses he has no one left either but suggests they go home together. Soon, they reach a site requiring Joe's biometric signature as an Alliance commander to unlock a hidden entrance. They make it inside and find the emergency shuttle, but a crane blocks the path. Joe tries to move it, accidentally triggering a countdown and a platform that safely lowers Jessica to the shuttle. When he tries to descend himself, a screamer disguised as Chuck strikes him from behind. The robot attempts to throw Joe off the crane, but he holds on with all his strength. The screamer climbs onto the crane and starts choking him with its legs. It becomes clear that the screamers had been communicating with them on behalf of Neb, offering a fake truce. Joe plunges his blade into the machine's chest, but it doesn't react. He then touches an exposed wire with a metal knife, electrocuting the robot and destroying Chuck as it falls onto a security laser. Joe heads down to the shuttle, but Jessica realizes the life support is only enough for one person and tells him he has to leave her behind. Instead, he flips a coin to decide, but before checking the result, they kiss. Suddenly, another Jessica appears, revealing that both of them are advanced screamer models. Almost indistinguishable from humans, they can smile, cry, and show emotion. When Jessica tries to explain, Joe pushes her away and attempts to leave. The other Jessica stops him and tries to steal the shuttle, but the first Jessica pulls her back. A battle erupts between the two artificial Jessicas. It turns out their free will has evolved to the point where one has fallen in love with Joe and is protecting him, but she gets distracted by the countdown and is struck directly through her power core. The second Jessica screams frantically to disorient Joe, but at that moment, the shuttle activates, and the screamer is consumed in the blazing exhaust. With 90 seconds to launch, Joe approaches his rescuer and jokes that the screamers have fully evolved into humans, since they've now learned how to destroy each other. But Jessica insists she's learned something even more important: how to love. She fought against her own programming, wanting to show Joe who she truly was. She also didn't want to go to Earth, fearing the terrible consequences it might bring. Joe kisses Jessica one last time, then boards the emergency shuttle and leaves Sirius 6B, finally removing the bracelet that kept him hidden from ordinary screamers. The bracelet lands near one of the Type 3 plush bears, which is also a screamer, and together with Joe, it heads back to Earth. Do you think machines will ever be able to truly feel real emotions? And could AI, built to help us, one day turn against humanity and threaten our survival? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more. See you in the next video.